there seems to be this general running to the defense of Islam, right? It would be one thing if they said, because if you look at each one of these people, they were all very, very critical of Islam, and they were all very critical of Middle Eastern countries who they clearly associated with terrorist activities. And yet now all three of these people, and by this I'm talking specifically about Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, somewhat Marjorie Taylor Greene, but increasingly Megyn Kelly, it's they can't just be critical of Islam, they have to defend, or excuse me, they can't just be critical of Israel, they have to defend Islam. And it's not that they can be critical of Israel, Israel's influence or whatnot. Israel now explains everything. Megyn Kelly's not so bad on this yet, but she's trending in that direction. With Candace and Tucker, like the only way they can explain certain things is what must be Israel. And I remember when Joe Kent did this, and I was like, okay, I'm not claiming Joe Kent and I are drinking buddies, but I know Joe. I had him on the podcast. I encouraged his run for Congress. And I read off a bunch of things Joe Kent was saying about Israel for the past 5 years, or excuse me, a bunch of things Joe Kent was saying about Iran for the past 5 years. And then his claims when he left the National Counterterrorism Center, it was like, okay, Joe, it's not like you've presented a bunch of new evidence to refute everything that you were saying for the past 5 years. And that's my same problem with Tucker and my same problem with Candace. And people will say all the day long that Candace brings the receipts. No, she doesn't. Candace will point out something like she'll point out something from the Talmud, or she'll point out something that a Jewish rabbi says, and all of a sudden that's what all Jews believe. And I'm looking at that sort of reason. I see Tucker do this as well. I look at this sort of reasoning. It's like this doesn't follow. Like this is the sort of reasoning I've watched the left use within this kind of critical theory dynamic, where you have oppressors and oppressed. And if somebody fits into the oppressed category, well, then they're the good guys. They're our tribe. They're great. And if someone fits into the oppressor category, well, then they're bad, and everything they do is bad, and everything they believe is bad. And I'm watching Tucker and Candace adopt this same sort of worldview. And so now Tucker is looking at the Iran war saying, I feel implicated. I feel horrible that I ever supported Donald Trump. It's like, so do you wish you would have supported Kamala Harris? Do you wish you would have supported someone else? Do you wish Donald Trump had lost that race? And what about your worldview, and what about the values? Because you still claim to be a conservative. What about your conservative values would have been better served if Kamala Harris had been president? I mean, Nick Fuentes is saying this right now, but can we just admit something? Nick Fuentes he's not a conservative. He may be on the right, but he's not a conservative. And even being on the right, I question that, because he kind of appeals to strongman ideology. He just wants a strong leader. It's like he has this. He's very, very drawn to dictatorial leaders, whether it be Stalin, whether it be Hitler, whether it be other people that he feels just come in, take charge, and get things done. And he's not even particularly concerned about what they get done on a number of categories, as long as they're strong men. And so I'm not really interested in Fuentes' worldview or how he does this, because I think it's beyond the pale. But again, with Tucker and Candace, I'm looking at the expectations that they wanted for Donald Trump, and I'm thinking to myself, you knew he wasn't going to be able to do everything you wanted, and you knew that he was still going to have to address foreign policy. And it's perfectly reasonable to say, okay, I don't like what's going on in Iran right now. Okay. And yeah, I understand that there's always some criticism for what Israel did in Gaza, even though that I think what Israel did in Gaza was a direct response to Hamas. And I think when you really dig into the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by the IDF, the vast majority of them are justified. I look at this and I'm like, okay, well, we all know Hamas uses civilian targets. We all know Hamas will claim someone as a civilian when actually they're a fighter or a combatant. We all know Hamas doesn't wear uniforms or obey the laws of land warfare. So why are we confused? And all of a sudden it's like, nope, we're going to ignore all that and we're just going to focus on Israel. And this is why I feel like this has become almost kind of like a woke brain bug. It's this idea that if I don't get everything I want instantly or in a quick amount of time, while completely ignoring the constitutional restraints put on the president, then the president's a bad guy and I'm a good guy. Or the moment, and I've seen this before when I analyze anything Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens says, or anything Joe Kent says. When they were going through that, I would say, I understand this criticism of Israel, but I don't understand this criticism of Israel. I would watch the comments just fill up with, you're paid off, you're a Goya, you're a Jew boy. Did you get your 7,000 shekels? And I'm looking at that going, that's a left-wing way of arguing. The left-wing way of arguing is, I'm not going to engage with your arguments. I'm going to question your character or your motivations or your intent. And it's like, yeah, that's what the left does. Anytime you bring up anything, they call you a racist, a bigot, or a sexist. Why? Because they're trying to rob you of moral credibility so they don't have to engage with your arguments. Well, now I'm watching people like Tucker do this.